morning and afternoon, people who are filtering in. We will get started in a minute or two. Windows open for us. Welcome, welcome those that are just filtering in. We will get started in perhaps another minute. Okay, let's go ahead and roll into some logistics and some introductions and all of the content that's not terribly important if people miss it as we're getting started. So quick introductions. My name is Marcus. I'm one of the owners of Harmonize, and I have with me Alex, who is an instructional designer and has been helping us out tons with webinar content and research on product ideas and fun things like that. So we'll be leading this today. Logistically, probably be about a 30-minute webinar is what we generally shoot for these, so we can get you in and out quickly. It will be recorded and we'll get it up into both the Help Center and on the website if there's other folks that you want to share it with when we're going into things. I would say also crucial, your questions are super key. So if you have anything, you're welcome to use the Q&A pod. You're welcome to use the chat. If you do use the chat, I recommend there's a little toggle above your message that probably defaults to hosts and panelists. You're welcome to leave it that way, but you're also welcome to put it to everyone so you can chat with each other when you're in the session. Sharing ideas is always great as well. So I think any other logistics, Alex, that I missed?
No, I think you covered it, and it's been good seeing more and more people roll in. So welcome to
Cool.
everyone who's joined us.
All right. So today's topic, combating ChatGPT with multimodal. So what we're going to roll through today is a series of different assessment strategies, assignment strategies, discussion forum strategies that are not just for the purpose of combating GPT. We are looking at how do we do what our best practices in learning design, UDL, different ideas of how to do assessment that is better than simple text assessment, but also has the added benefit of it's harder for ChatGPT to answer. So we're going to kind of union those two and talk through some different strategies of things you can do. We will be demoing these in Harmonize, which now that I think about it, Alex, I was going to have you share the presentation, but if I'm going to be showing some of these in Harmonize as well, are you comfortable doing that demo, or do you want me to run the demo side of it as well?
I'm okay either way. If you're more set up to the demo, do you need me to resend you the link to the
I
presentation?
have
You
it,
got
so
it.
I will.
All
We
right.
will quickly shift and do that because clearly I didn't have enough coffee when thinking through how that was going to work this morning. And I will go into getting some of this set up. All right. So, so to start with, multimodal, the idea, and I'm guessing a lot of people are coming to terms with this now. ChatGPT writes as well or better than many of our students. The thing it does not do yet, or at least not commonly, are videos, imagery that is supporting what you're doing, like combination of text plus imagery, text plus video, text plus screen share, or just pure video, pure screen share, those types of things. So the different ways to demonstrate knowledge and to share information that are not text-based are naturally going to be harder for ChatGPT to be able to fake, if you will. Also, side benefit of that is that when you're talking about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, a lot of that says, can we present information to our students in ways that are different ways, right? Text and video, text plus imagery, audio recording, podcast, whatever it is. That's better for learners to consume content because then they can choose what format is best for them. But also harder to cut and paste a ChatGPT video or a video into ChatGPT. And then additionally, on the learner side, allowing the student choice of how do they express themselves in different ways and encouraging that is also good learning science, right? So if we are encouraging them not just to express themselves in text, we are enforcing different learning pathways in their brains to be able to express it. They are getting to choose a little more how they're actually expressing themselves. And so those are the types of things we're going to walk through and center on today when we are actually going through some of these strategies. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So let's roll into what we're going to start with. So we're going to kind of ping pong back and forth on ideas and talking points on this to share some of the load of going through things. Alex did a bunch of the initial research with coming up with some of these ideas, and then I added a little bit of my own stuff, but it's mostly her. She's the brain in the room. So let's roll into them. Okay, so first one. So we often look at this, and instructors are I will say, concerned with the idea of doing everything in video because there's a time load there. There's a workload of like, oh my gosh, if every single student submits 3 minutes of video, how are we actually going to consume all of that? It's a lot of work, right? Especially if we are not super fast at listening to videos on 2x speed. How do we actually get through all of that? And so the first strategy we're going to recommend is actually kind of stick with what you're doing today. Ask your students to do, text essays, text writing, etc., but ask them to supplement in some way with multimedia. So ask them to do perhaps a video reflection on the learning process as part of the assignment, or have them do a screen share walkthrough of the assignment and how they actually work through it. The idea here is that they are presenting the same information or information plus reflection in the same assignment. So you can still read the text-based answer and get a feel for what the students are doing. You alternatively, if you are suspicious that maybe they use ChatGPT or you want to dig a little deeper with that particular student, you can flip over and watch the recording of what the student is doing. For those, let me go ahead and jump into an assignment and kind of just give you a feel of what that would look like. I'm going to use a topic that I use, has a bunch of stuff in it, but we'll jump in and show you from your student perspective what that looks like. They're creating a new post, and this can be private assignments or discussions, so you can use Harmonize for both. That's something people are not super familiar with. But if they are submitting their assignment here, you're still going to have them do paragraphs and paragraphs of text, of whatever it is that you want them to do. So tons and tons and tons of text. But in the same post or in the same assignment submission, you can have them just simply turn on the video recording and do a couple different strategies here. So reflection on how the learning process went, just ask them to reflect on what they struggled with, what they didn't struggle. You could also have them do some just basic fact retrieval of like, okay, you wrote all of that above, stream of consciousness, give me 1 minute of what you thought the most important thing you wrote and your most important takeaway was from it. So then they're having to synthesize the data above that they wrote and then regurgitate it into some sort of small 1 minute segment, 2 minute segment, 3 minute segment. In your post settings in Harmonize, you can actually control how much video they can submit. Up to 60 minutes, down to 1 minute. So you can make them do it quickly, almost like a quick rapid fire presentation type of thing. So then when they are submitting, you have both the paragraphs of text they have written. Even if ChatGPT helped them write them, we are at least encouraging reflecting on what the students have written here, so that if they are taking the total easy way out and using ChatGPT to write, they're still having to think about it, synthesize the information, which means we are still triggering learning to happen. And then you can read this part and then optionally play this part when you're looking inside of the gradebook, etc. So this is I'd say the easiest thing to transition into because you probably already have a set of instructions that are telling your students what to do, what kind of activity you want them to complete. And so it's a matter of simply, if you're using Harmonize already for this assignment, just edit it and add an additional little section. If you're not using Harmonize, you could throw this activity into our AI for prompt generation, which I'll show you in towards the end, how to do sort of modify an assignment to make it multimodal. So like paste in the assignment and be like, and please add a video requirement for reflection, and it will restructure the assignment for you. So we'll go through how to build some of these with the AI tools towards the end. But this one is, I'd say, probably the easiest because you're not requiring yourself to watch 30 videos. It's a simple modification to what you're already asking your students to do, but it is causing them to reflect on the learning in different ways and to be able to actually present something in a way that ChatGPT simply can't do it. In the next year or two, this may become not a great strategy for this because it's quite possible that it can deep fake a video of me synthesizing information as well. But for now, as we are continuing the AI wars, this is strategy number one. Alex, did I miss anything on that?
No, I was just thinking, I love that strategy. I love how you emphasized that it's an easy one to implement because you can basically just like layer something on top of what you already have. You can even potentially come up with a prompt that you really like for that reflection piece and like use it in all of them. And you're right, like this is just a good learning thing, right? It's not just about combating ChatGPT, like that process of, I formulated these thoughts and now I'm going to reflect back on them in a different way or talk about my learning process or pull something out. Like that's just good for reinforcing learning. So I think that's all wonderful. And that
Something
actually kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add, I did this in video, but for those that have been around Harmonize for a while, about 3 months ago, um, something like that. Anyway, 4 or 5 months, I don't even know. Time's flying. We added screen share as well, so you can actually have your students straight inside of the assignment select the screen they want to share. This can be literally sharing the same screen I'm looking at and looking at the text and talking about it. They can open up a Google Doc and share it. They can open up a PowerPoint presentation if you ask them to put together a PowerPoint presentation. But it's very easy for them to select the screen, and then they can actually walk through and like highlight their introduction paragraph and be like, I was struggling with the thesis. I found these particular sentences difficult to work with and tie together. And then when I got into the body, it flowed pretty smoothly, but the conclusion I was struggling with, it's a mess type of thing. And they can just be scrolling through their actual document while they're doing it. So you're getting a voiceover of them talking about the learning as well. So it doesn't have to just be video. It can be screen share, any other type of supporting resource.
I love hearing students talk about their writing. It always helps me know how to approach them when I know how they were feeling about it or thinking about it. So that is a
Alex,
really cool strategy.
yeah, Alex used to teach, was it just freshman comp or was it all comp or what was it?
It was freshman composition and then a couple of poetry classes where they submitted writing. So that's a very good strategy. And there's also down there is the audio recorder. So if you have students who don't
Yep,
feel comfortable being on camera, they can just record audio, which is a good
yep.
option too.
Yeah, simply talk through it if they don't like their background being on display as well. Or there didn't I had to fix my hair before this call, but now I'm ace, so I'm good to go. All right, hair tips from Marcus. All right, next one, providing multimedia content. Alex, you want to handle this?
Yeah, so this is a cool one that I was really just thinking about for the first time yesterday. When we imagined this webinar, I think we were really focused on students submitting multimedia content. But as I was digging into some things people have written on this topic, one of the interesting strategies is to also give them multimedia content because we know AI is very good at being fed text. You write your prompt, you give your students a reading, and the AI is pretty good at reading that text and doing things with it. It's not as good at reading videos and doing things with video. So I think one really nice strategy is to give your students some multimedia content in the first place. Have them reflect on a podcast or a video, give them a video lecture and have them in part respond to your video lecture. They're going to have a tougher time feeding that video lecture to the AI. But again, this is not just about evading ChatGPT because we also know that providing content through multiple means, representing content in multiple ways is a good universal design for learning practice because students want to be able to get that content in different ways. So that's one of those things that just does double duty in terms of being good for learning, but also maybe helping you evade the AI a little bit. One like extra tip here I would say is it's particularly good if you're using either bespoke media, in other words, media you've created, recordings you've done, and either done them directly in Harmonize or uploaded, or things that are just maybe a little bit more unique or niche. This trick doesn't work quite as well with films that have been analyzed a million times over, and that analysis is easily found on the web. So that's one thing you can do.
Yeah, I was playing around with this a little bit because I'm like, is it true that it still can't? Like, for example, ChatGPT didn't used to be able to consume YouTube videos, and so as we were prepping for this webinar, I went and confirmed yesterday. I said, hey, read this YouTube video and give me a summary, and it's like, sorry, I can't do that. I'm like, no, really, do it, and it was like, no, I can't. And so there are guardrails in ChatGPT about consuming some of this content. So even if you're using a YouTube video, it's not as easy. So we're giving them that multimedia, experience but not as easy for them to just paste it into ChatGPT and to be able to get a summary. There are ways to work around that. You can download caption files and such. But it's really a question of, can we just make it more entertaining and easier to do the assignment than to cheat? Because frankly, if they're also doing multimedia assignments, it's more as they're accustomed to consuming content. So it's a better way for them to be able to experience the information as they're used to, the TikTok generation, if you will. Not to make myself sound old, the TikTok generation. We're going through it. But yeah, when you're in Harmonize and you're editing your instructions, you can record video straight in here as well, just as I was showing before, and you as the instructor get up to an hour. So you could actually kick on the video recorder and you could give them the whole assignment this way. Like, okay, students, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to do X, Y, Z. I'm looking for this type of requirement, blah, 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 blah. I'm giving you all the instructions in a verbal format. We are going to auto caption these, so you're not having to worry about the accessibility side of things. But this is a simple step where you're present. So instructor presence is so key in the class. And here I am being present, speaking to you as a student, telling you what I want you to do. And then you're off to do it. So you don't even necessarily have to write your instructions in purely text, although I frankly have a hard time remembering everything that was said in a video. So pulling out some key bullet points still could be quite useful. But it's something where, maybe throw in a little bit of extra resource here for them of what kind of the nuance of what you're looking for, so they can hear it. They can hear it from you in your voice, but they also can't just grab this video and go throw it into ChatGPT as well.
That's such a great point. I used to do this like way before ChatGPT. I would try to provide really good written instructions, but I would record a video of me walking through those instructions and providing the kind of nuance you're talking about to kind of frame those. And yeah, that's something fantastic. That's genuinely helpful for students, and at the same time is going to be like a little bit harder to plop into ChatGPT.
Real quick, I'm going to highlight one thing for you. Under post settings, if you are leaning into some of these video and screen share ideas, you have control over the length of video, both for video audio as well as screen capture separately. The defaults for these are 5 minutes in Harmonize for video, 15 minutes for screen share. You can lower these down to 1 minute or up to 60 minutes. So if you're really trying to keep your students on track with short videos, come in here and bump it down to like 1 or 2 minutes or something, and then we are going to disallow any video longer than that. So you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of 30-minute video responses. All right, what is up next? Okay, so creating multimedia content. You can ask students to respond to a discussion prompt with just writing. You can ask them to do something just as purely as a written assignment. If they actually have to do research, find the content, and then transform that into, let's take PowerPoint presentation or Google Drive, Google Slides presentation, or whatever, we are adding one extra step onto the process of their learning, right? They had to get the information, determine what they're going to do, and then they had to organize it into a PowerPoint. ChatGPT can't do that at all right now. They can use Gamma to do it, which is a separate app. We can talk about that in a bit. And they're starting to add some of these into PowerPoint, but the actual presentation and speaking inside of Harmonize to be able to do a slide deck and talk about it as you're walking through it is fantastic for them to be able to get to that point of presenting knowledge and demonstrating knowledge that way. This requires a little bit of a mental shift, because we often think of the discussion boards in your LMS as like a text conversation talking about something. But the activities in your course don't have to be purely discussion. You can make them work product. You can make them actually need to build something. You can give them a thing to do as opposed to just discuss the reading. This is where our AI prompt generator can help you out as well. Maybe this is a good time to swing into this if you have not tried this. So let's say I'm now proposing that you're asking them to put a presentation together, and you're like, you're wanting me to move all of my assignments to that. Like, how long is that going to take me in my course? That's where this AI generation can really help some. When I'm creating this, I'm going to clear this out and pretend that I could have pasted in my existing activity, or I could start from scratch. But the goal is here that I'm looking to have my students present a PowerPoint about the Civil War and the causes of the Civil War, keep it short type of thing. Whatever I want them to do, can put in learning objectives, and we will still, so if you have learning objectives in the text world that you still want to maintain, just paste those in and we will line this up for you. And you can change the complexity level for your students and then click generate topic instructions. We are now going to build a series of instructions for you that will help your students come through and answer this. So then it's laying out what it wants them to do, what we're trying to get them to do. Read it and make sure it actually did what we were asking it to do, because it's talking about what we're asking actually them to do. But I really want to say the primary post should be a screen share of a presentation, because it kind of ignored me on that one, because I put it in there as well. So now it's going to rework that to add that in. So make sure it's doing what you want. But this is a quick way to be able to build something that is less of a discuss the readings, is more of a actually, share your screen presentation, 5 to 7 minutes in total. If you're going to ask for 7 minutes, make sure you go off and change the limit to allow 7 minutes, because the default is, well, I guess for presentation it's 15. Never mind, that would have been fine. But this will help you migrate your assignments into something that is more multimodal. You can add them to the instructions and then go ahead and tweak them as you see fit. Super important to tweak them, because it's talking about exactly what you're looking for, what kind of concepts, and you can go back and forth with AI to do this. Trying to ease that burden of how do you shift away from pure discussion mode into more of a work product mode. And then this allows your students to demonstrate their knowledge with PowerPoint presentation. And then I guess, Alex, were there any learning touch points on that I didn't cover, like why PowerPoint presentations are good, why synthesizing that information is good?
Well, I mean, this might just kind of lead us into our next bullet point, which is that you can promote UDL actually by providing and accepting
I did that on
multimedia
purpose,
content.
Alex.
You set me up so nicely. Thank you, Marcus. So again, like in addition to this being something that is a little harder for the AI to do, we know that it's really nice for students to both receive multimedia content from you, to receive things in both text and another modality, whether it's audio or video. But it's also nice to invite students to submit their work in these different modes. So, Universal Design for Learning encourages both multiple means of expression and multiple means of representation. So we represent content for the students in different ways, but then we invite them to represent express their learning in these different ways. So, and you can invite them. It doesn't also, like we've been talking a lot about video and audio, but you brought up the PowerPoint presentations. Having students create a PowerPoint presentation that's image rich can be another option here too. I'm always thinking about accessibility, and with Universal Design for Learning, what we're trying to do is make things that are highly accessible. So that PowerPoint option where students could maybe just submit slides is a great one too for students who maybe don't or aren't able to record audio or video. It can be kind of your +1 thing. Our first bullet here, require writing, but supplement with multimedia. That multimedia can be audio, it can be video, it can be presentations, but it could also be something just really image heavy. So yeah, that's really all I've got on that bullet. I don't know if you have more you want to add there.
I'm gonna dwell on the equity of this one a little bit, because we
Yeah.
work with a lot of community colleges, some that are rather rural, and are working with students who are not as comfortable writing. They have writing stress. I in particular, my grammar is terrible. I will blame society in some way for that. But we've heard from a lot of instructors that when their students are just even given the option to respond in ways in this UDL mode, of respond in ways that aren't writing, they will actually kick on the video recorder and talk about whatever it is they were learning in class. And they are way more comfortable doing that than they are writing, because then they get all caught up in the grammar of things. Obviously, writing's important and you need to have your students be able to write, but when it's not the key thing you're doing, can you lower the stress for those students so that they can express themselves in different ways? Some students will choose to write, some will choose to do audio, some will choose to do video, whatever it is. We had a whole class of people choose to do memes, even though the instructor didn't ask for that, which was super awesome, because that's how the first student did it, and the other students thought it was cool, and then they started expressing their thoughts on the reading using memes. So giving your students the options can help support some of those students who are just not great writers as well. And then, we can get into some of the AI coaching we're doing for writing maybe towards the end if we have time. But yeah, so think of it not just as a combating ChatGPT or good learning design. Think of it also as an equity perspective of it doesn't have to all be writing. Do I click twice for this one? I don't remember the slides on this one.
There are like 3 sub-bullets for this one, so I leave it up to you how many times you want to click. There you
I'm just gonna click them all. So I think this one is perhaps more for you to cover than for me.
Yeah, so design multimedia assessments or assignments, this would be true for discussions as well, that are harder for AI. So we've covered a lot of strategies that just have to do with the multimedia, but I think it's important to mention that in addition to having it be multimedia, you want to make the assignment itself something that's going to be a little tougher for AI. AI is great at just regurgitating content. But we know that regurgitating content is also the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy, and that it's great to challenge students to go higher on that taxonomy level. And that when you do that, you are also making something that's going to be harder for AI to do. So giving them assignments and assessments that really promote critical thinking and analysis, asking them to explain their thought processes. This is a great one that I heard in a webinar the other day on math, where the instructors were having their students not just submit answers to problems, but submit videos or audio where the students had to talk through their thought process and how they solved the problem, which is fantastic because, again, this is not just busy work to combat ChatGPT. If you can explain your thought process and how you got to an answer, that is going to be so much better for your learning, and it's going to be a much better demonstration of learning than just, plopping down an answer on the paper. And then finally, relating content to something else. This is a bit vague, but I figured I could expand here. Asking students not just to read content, but to write it to something, in their own lives, or relate it to something they've learned in another class at your school. That's a great way to activate prior knowledge. Or ask them to relate it to stuff in previous discussions you have. If you have discussion boards every week, how does this content relate to some of the things we've discussed? That's something that's tough for AI because your students don't want to go back and try to feed every discussion board and every post to the AI, but it's also just something that's good for their learning because they're being invited to go back and return to those things. It's like the concept of interleaving. Like, it's better than for learning to sort of return to things and intersperse them, actually, than it is to just like straight march through single topics. So when you invite them to go back to those previous discussions and make connections, you're strengthening their learning. And at the same time, again, all of this is very tough for AI.
And this, I think, whereas maybe some authentic assessment stuff can come in as well. So if you're thinking about, well, let me come back in and actually, well, first I'll talk about authentic assessments. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's this idea of like trying to tie what the student is learning in some way to the real world, a real world problem, or a real personal experience that they have. And so are they going to be willing to let ChatGPT make up something about themselves as part of the story that ties into what they're doing? Or would they want to own that in a more of a degree? Or does it also just make it more interesting for them? Because if you can tie the content to their personal life, they're going to be more invested, sort of intrinsically motivated to be able to do this. Also, once again, harder for ChatGPT to do. So authentic assessment, well-researched, good strategies to be able to make it interesting. Also a great way to just sort of slightly sidestep some of the ChatGPT things when you're going through it. So, and if you're struggling to come up with some of those, I'm going to come back to this prompt generator again. I'm maybe beating this a little dead, but it's hard to do this, right? Like if you're not trained like Alex as an instructional designer, or if you ask me to sit down and write 5 assignments that do this, it would take a lot of time. And in particular, she mentioned Bloom's taxonomy level. And are you familiar with that? We built that into this prompt generator so you can actually just march up and down the Bloom's taxonomy level and run some examples and see what you think. So, we default it to apply. Which is sort of you've learned some facts, you've remembered them, you understand them, now you're ready to apply that knowledge in an activity. This is the default mode. But when she was saying march up the level, you can actually move up to analyzing or move up to evaluation. And we are going to generate more complicated, for lack of a better word, assignments for your students to do. So you can play with this, generate them, and see what you think. Are my students capable of doing that? Do I think they are? does that seem to fit with where I'm at in my class? And so as you march students through, you can also lower it somewhat. You can actually have them remembering facts and regurgitating things via video, and then move them up to apply, and then move up to analyze. So you don't necessarily have to be an instructional design specialist to be able to do this. You can use this tool because you're the subject matter expert as an instructor, right? So you can take this, set it to whatever you want, play with it until you find something you're like, yes, A, I want to teach that because it's cool. And B, it feels like a good thing we were talking about in terms of moving up the level. And I will also say you can do things like, let's say we were talking about Civil War history and politics. I can say, tie this to real world politics today. That's part of that whole authentic assessment. And then I can also say, reference earlier readings in the class, back to what Alex was saying as a strategy there. And I can be like, and then I want you to do a video summary of how all of those tie together. So we're kind of pulling in all of those strategies, but I'm just brain dumping into this thing to then be able to generate an activity, and it will run through a possible template for you on how to pull all of that together. And then you can read it and then tweak it as you see fit. So you don't have to start from scratch with some of these things. You can put your subject matter expertise and some of these ideas just into the generator. Or if I think most people here are Harmonize customers. If you're not, you can do the same thing with ChatGPT directly. You can actually tell it, like, I want to be at this Bloom's level, and I want you to generate a couple activities for this type of topic that I'm working on. And it won't do quite the same thing we're doing here inside of Harmonize, but it will allow you to sort of to play with it and to get a feel for what it can look like. So you don't have to start from scratch, I guess is the thing. And just try it with 1 or 2 assignments to start with to see what happens in your course when you're going through it. I think that was the end of our content, wasn't it? Oh, it was not. I can handle this one. We're running a little over on time, but finally, setting up group projects. When we are using that prompt generator, it will sometimes generate group projects, but you can also explicitly ask it to. If the students have to work together, even if they did use ChatGPT to pull in some of the information, they still have to work together. They still have to synthesize the information. And that's as easy inside of Harmonize as, setting it to a group visibility under post settings. Students in the same group, pick the groups. This works in Canvas and Blackboard, or informally do it in Moodle and D2L to be able to break your students into groups. They have to go meet. They have to talk about it. They have to use Zoom or Google Meets to do it if they're fully virtual, and they have to synthesize that information. So it can't just be like we as a group delegated everything to AI and we're not talking about it. It requires a bit of a social stigma against that as well. Like one of those students hopefully really cares out of the 2 or 3. If we have, hopefully all 3 care, I should say, but at least one of them will be interested in that, and so they're less likely just to phone it in. Right. We ran a touch long. And then, so I guess, Alex, if you want to handle the final accessibility thing, we were kind of lacing this through as we were going, but
We laced it through. But
Okay.
I would say it's just like a final takeaway. Some students aren't going to be able to do some of the modalities we've discussed. And so it's a good idea to offer them options. This kind of circles back to our first one, require writing, but supplement with multimedia. You can always require writing and then say, but also give me something else, and then give them a few different options, whether it's the video, the audio, the screen share, the visual product. And let them choose so that your content is really accessible for everyone. But I think that's it. I think we talked a lot about universal design for learning and keeping things accessible with all of these strategies, hopefully.
Cool. And I would encourage you, go play with ChatGPT and give it your assignments and see how it answers your assignments as well as a final step, so that you know what types of things it can and can't do. And play that student experience. Like, go take your assignment, paste it in, and then be like, answer this for me. See what it does. See if it was like, you're like, oh, that's about what my students say. Oh, well, maybe I need to do something a little more along these lines as well. So I hope this was helpful. So if you have any questions, or if you're starting to play with some of these features in Harmonize that you want to change, you can always hit us up on our support group, support emails. That's support@harmonizelearning.com, which I'm going to throw out in the chat. We can get you a guide on how to do some of these things. It's all pretty straightforward. The students never seem to struggle with it, but the instructors, we want you to know exactly how you're configuring it and what's going on as well. So you can always drop us an email, and we will follow up with the recording to this sometime soon, as well as getting an article on it with some of the points into our help center as well for you to be able to play with. Right, any questions? We didn't have any throughout the time. I guess we were talking really quickly, but we can hang out a little late if you have questions. We can bring you off mute and into video if you want as well. Your call. Seeing people drop out, so we'll hang out in case someone is typing a question. All right, I'm going to go with no questions. We must have just crushed the content, Alex. There was
Crushed it.
no
Nail it.
possibility of questions.
Your suggestion at the end to put your prompt into ChatGPT at the end, I think was a really good one. It was a good thing to leave people with.
Go fight the good fight. All right, thank you all for taking the time. Thank you for caring to be able to change your assessments. I know it's a ton of work, so hopefully this helped and that you can get rolling with it. And we will talk in the next webinar. Take care, everybody.